All right. Well, we have everybody on the phone, and we're still kind of gathering here, but we're going to get started nonetheless. After a long hiatus, school's been out for a while. We're restarting the Chemuniversity program that we used to do. And for those that are new and haven't participated before, basically what we want to do is just continue discussing and bringing up topics that are relevant to not only the marketing industry as a whole, but perhaps life science industry, anything that's relevant to what we're doing on a day-to-day basis. And so our first guest this year is myself, Steve Johnson. Actually, it's the other Steve Johnson. Some of you may have met Steve before. Steve was at our holiday party, or not a holiday, our employee customer party back in the summer, and was a lead singer in Jeff's band.
Instant credibility.
Instant credibility, yeah, I could get instant credibility. But he has a side job, which is actually a full-time job, working at Weber Shandwick here in Chicago on the Army account, where he oversees the content development and content management, I guess, of that business. And so we've all been talking for the last, 4, 5, 6 months about the whole idea of content. And we thought it would be important to kind of revisit that and just get an outside perspective on where the marketplace as a marketing agencies are going in terms of this idea of content. The fact is, each and every day, that's what we're focused on, right? We're developing content for our clients and making sure that that's the most relevant content for their targets and really helps differentiate them and helps sell their products. And then we distribute it in a million different ways, whether it be through PR or online or trade shows or whatever. So anyways, it's really not a foreign subject to us, but I think it's important to kind of get a different perspective and look at how other agencies, a well-respected international firm, is looking at content and how they're delivering that to their customers. And so Steve's just going to walk us through a little bit about his perspective on it and ask a lot of questions, as we always do, and have some beer and talk. So I'm going to turn it over to Steve Johnson.
Well, I want to thank you guys all for having me over and willing to sit down with somebody else who's basically, is doing a lot of the same things that you guys are doing on a day in and day out basis. And something I have found is it is great to be able to talk to people who do come at it from a different perspective. I mean, most of the work that I have done has been in the consumer or public affairs area, not the life sciences. So there are some avenues that seem much more logical and avenues that we leverage much more than maybe you guys do, but at the same time, the way that I've titled this is images, words, and avenues. That's really what it comes down to. It's what is it that we're developing visually, what are we doing in the written word, and then how many different places can we find to distribute that, to disseminate it. I've been doing communications for about 20 years now. Started off doing radio at the Score Sports Radio, so I did reporter work, did corporate work by working at Amico Corporation. You guys might know it as BP. For 5 years, I produced 2 annual reports there, did a lot of media training, did a lot of public and government affairs work, and then went into the agency world at Manning, Selvidge & Lee, and now at Weber Shandwick. And I've focused mostly on a lot of sports stuff, but it's really sports, public affairs, anything that's got some gravitas to it. I think that I'm one of those folks that I know people won't come and ask me to be part of the team if you can put the word cute to it in any way, shape, or form. So luckily I haven't had to hawk like a Charmin or anything. But I also don't like doing things like fat-free meats and consumer stuff like that. I've been lucky enough for the last 12 years now to have the United States Army as my client. Obviously there's a lot of gravitas to that. And obviously there are a lot of barriers to communicating with that kind of a client. People that are friendly, people that are negative to it, whatever it might be. And quite frankly, like you guys may do with your work in life science, either going out to consumer or even business to business, depending on the innovations, you're having to get past what people don't understand about what your client is bringing. What is new? How are we differentiating ourselves? And having to spend that time. And of course, there's less and less time for us to do that. So the idea that content is king, images, words, and avenues. Am I going left or right? How am I doing this? Okay. Basically, right now, I think you guys know that everyone is a producer right now. I I played in the band and at that party. I've been doing a lot of music over a bunch of years, and I've got recording equipment in my basement, and it's gotten easier and easier to do that recording in your basement just like anything else right now. And so even in the business world, everyone is starting to produce. And part of it is because we've got fewer resources to be able to have produce for us. Magazines, be it trade or consumer, news outlets in general are losing their, they're losing their size of their workforce, ceasing to exist in many different ways. So how are we being able to carry that message for ourselves? I'll tell you this, I just had you guys might be finding it here. I'm a former producer, reporter and producer. We've got about, in the Minneapolis office, which is the office for which I work, we've probably got about 10 people, 12 people who are former reporters. We've got more than that in the Chicago office and more than that in the New York office. One of the things we're doing, everyone is doing more, is hiring former reporters, former filmographers, former documentarians, because they're the ones who are used to creating the kind of content that we are now pushing out. And you're seeing a lot more of these folks gravitate more to a public relations firm than to an advertising firm. And at the same time, because we're in this gray area, advertising firms are trying to do what public relations firms are doing. It's really, really gray right now in terms of who owns developing this kind of content and then distributing it out. Especially as we still see new things coming out, everything from Twitter and Facebook, which have obviously now taken hold to more disposable social media, such as Snapchat. And I don't know if anyone's familiar with that.
I know you're probably a little biased because you come from more the PR side, or your firm is more on the PR side, but it would seem to me that PR is winning that battle in terms of who's owning.
I would like to think so. Well, I mean, here's the way that I've always looked at it is, first of all, PR is studies show PR is 5 times more credible than advertising, just because of the fact that you're using third persons and third parties to help you, validate what your message is. Versus just crafting whatever you want, Don Draper style, dumping it out there. Not saying it doesn't have a place, I'm just saying 5 times more credible. It's also 5 times more cost effective. So ultimately, if you can be more credible and you can be more, save some money, people are going to gravitate that way, especially since more and more people question, people more question advertising in general, advertising having to find its spots more because they're getting fast forwarded, etc. But I just had lunch last week with a woman who is looking to make the move from doing sports at the Associated Press to getting into a client side or into an agency and working there. And I expressed to her, because of the work that we have to do as public relations and marketers, we are looking for people who are used to not only working with the media on a daily basis, that they've got great friends they can call up and know what the end cal is and what really is going to work and what really isn't going to work. But how do you put that video piece together? What's the best way to write that? How are you going to be able to get that press release and then maybe turn it into a script? We hired a guy who's a 15-time Emmy Award winner down in our Dallas office to be our videographer for some of the stuff I'm going to show you later on for the Army. Because he's awesome, and he knows exactly how to put something together that we can use that relates to people, how to chop it up for the news when you're going to send the B-roll out, how to pull it into a documentary style, so if we want to have a longer form video piece, any of that kind of stuff. So those people are getting hired in, and that's something that actually when I talk to college students, I say, listen, make sure, if you're in marketing, make sure you take some journalism classes, make sure you take film classes, make sure you take photography classes. We've got a team of about 18 on Army Strong Storytelling, which is what our group is called. And at the U.S. Army All-American Bowl, which is a high school all-star football game, it's totally cool, love it, love doing it. And we have these kids come down, and they're supposed to be taking video and photos for some of our social media channels. And I sit with the client and I say, okay, I'll talk to them about this, this, and this, because we're having to pull down some of these things. Because they don't realize you can't just take a picture of someone where their back's to the camera and the person doing push-ups, his hair's hanging in their face, because there's something there that you're missing the story. If what we have left, or what is going to be the most compelling, is going to be these images, be it video or still, we have to know how to compose that. So we're not just graduating out of PR, disciplines or journalism disciplines, and you've got to come at it with what's your artistic frame of reference for this? How are you going to make something so compelling visually that people will watch it? Artists have a lot of that. Photographers who have been doing things for a very long time have that. You can't just be, I went to DePaul and I got a PR degree and now I'm going to go and do all this stuff. So it's something that we really, really are focused on. Everyone's a producer. We've got to make sure that we are developing the best content. Okay, so you heard content is king, blah, 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 blah. We hear a lot of that. It's less about the content in the longer term. In the short term, we have to make sure we're developing something that is useful, that resonates, that is compelling, that, quite frankly, if we can make it have an image, that's great. One of the problems I see with this whole push of where we're going is images are taking over in general. We have less and less and less writing, which is great for advertisers. Anyone advertiser specific in here? Okay.
No.
Good, perfect. So I won't be insulted. They use no grammar in the first place. I mean, if you ever look at an ad, everything's in capital letters, there's no commas, they end in prepositions. I mean, it's all these things that we learn as writers and journalists that you're not supposed to do. But it's just devolving further, where we're going to be almost like cavemen again. We're communicating so much with pictures, so much with visuals. We have to make sure that visual really tells that story very well. So what is the content that you're bringing? It's great if you've got strong written content, it's great if you have strong visuals, but once you deliver that, what's happening? That's not the end of the road. And that's one of the big things that, I'm sure you guys are grasping, and that we are really grasping and really trying to figure out better about how to maximize what that content is. The idea is much more along these lines. The content creation is something that, we've got really, really good handle with. I think, in most agencies. I think you're going to go from agency to agency, and there are bright people everywhere, and really strong with artistic bents and an understanding of the detail and the depth and the content that has to go in, of the story that's being told. But what are you doing with it next is what's going to make you maximize that content, okay? If you think about the visual that gets put onto a Twitter or into a Tumblr, it's not just the fact that, okay, we posted that thing and now people are reading it. What's happening next is how are we engaging people with that? That's what makes that piece of content live more. Instead of just putting it in front of them and letting them absorb it, now we want to talk with them about it. We want to get reaction about it. We want to see other people talk about it. We want to see them share it. So the idea is, first of all, syndication. Where are we going with this content? What are we developing? What are the avenues that we think we can use? And then once we're there, how are we talking through it with people? Are we monitoring what's being said? Are we learning from that monitoring? Are we participating in that conversation? All of those pieces.
Do you guys start the conversation as well? I mean, so you
Yeah.
put out the content, right? But do you kind of force feed the conversation and start that going?
There are many, depending on what the avenue is, yes, we do. And you do that by inquiring, by asking the questions. I mean, it's a lot easier. It's admittedly going to be easier to do that sort of thing in a consumer format when you're talking about something like, let's say one of our clients is Nike, and they put something out, they put out a new advertisement, and then you can sit there, and the people, especially the people who you've interacted with before, what do you think of that? Hey, do you think you can do better than this guy? I mean, any question that you want that starts that conversation. Or if you see a flicker of hope in someone's posting, in a reaction, how do you use that to leverage that to drive the conversation further? So we have a lot of what we call community managers, and I think you guys do you guys do community management at all?
Not formally, but
Okay. We've got, the Chicago office has a ton of folks who do community management, and that's their whole gig, is really making sure they're monitoring those avenues, making sure they're getting the answers back out, making sure that the communications has some messaging to it, so that you're moving your business forward, which is something that we teach from, message development to message training to all of the material development. They're in there, and actually it's been a little bit more for some of our other offices. It's taken a little longer for us to embrace that idea of being a community manager for a client, because the default, because of we really want our social media to be authentic in the first place, and I think in public relations we try to be truly authentic, is the idea that shouldn't our client be answering that question? Shouldn't our client be engaging in that conversation? So it's been a little bit more for us to really get back to the point that we're driving that conversation. But no matter who's doing it, it's this point of, let's not just develop something and dump it out there. Let's make it live. Let's bring it to life. Let's have conversations around it, because that's where you're going to germinate your further ideas and your further relationships.
Sorry to not go off track, but in order to have that conversation and facilitate that, we need to be monitoring that. And I think some of our clients don't even get to that, or aren't even at that point of sophistication yet, where they're truly actively monitoring what's going on socially, at least with them.
Right. We've got about 3 or 4 offices now that have listening stations. Where basically, we've got 6 TVs, and for an hour a day or whatever, if you're doing a launch, you've got someone in there that's keeping track of what's going on. With the United States Army, we do daily monitoring of social channels and online news. So every day we've got something coming out. We've got some stats for what happened on Facebook, blah, 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 blah. And we really have to be cognizant of what that conversation is like and what kind of content. I mean, this is a little bit off, but the whole idea is, if you have an editorial calendar and you're developing content and you're looking for the right times and places to distribute it, if you don't know what's being talked about out there, you don't know if you're jumping into a fire pit, where a conversation is being had that you don't want to become the firebrand for. Unfortunately, at times, the Army has many, many, many conversations that are going on that you don't want to be a part of, whether it's sexual abuse on posts or suicides. I mean, they have real issues that have to be dealt with, but you can't have that and then just jump out there with something like, hey, speaking of that, we've got we're giving away our OTC scholarships. I mean, you've got to be really careful about how you're handling it. And so, as we do that, we talk about what those avenues are that where we can move and where we can go. It's about owned, earned, and paid is the way that we really look at this. Look at these 3 things. We've talked about the paid media in general. That's the advertising, and it could be any advertising at all whatsoever. And quite frankly, we've actually I don't know if I'll get to this particular case study, but advertising still plays a huge role for us, because obviously it's still carrying one of the thematics that we want to go out and distribute in a different format. Since I don't think I have it, I'll just talk about the fact that at the U.S. Army All-American Bowl this year, the Army broke new advertising about African American officership. Okay, representation for African Americans and Hispanics is not very strong, or it's not congruent with the American population or even the enlisted soldier population in the United States Army. So they broke these new ads, put them together, and we said, all right, well, they're going to go up on television, for sure. We're going to have some sponsored tweets out there for it as well. And then we also played it in the Alamo Dome during the game. We had it playing on the screen and part of the broadcast. So that was fantastic. We took that video and we put it onto our Facebook page, so we can start engaging people there. People could see it a little bit earlier. They can talk about it. And the kinds of questions that we normally get in our Go Army channels, we can start feeding there and push them to GoArmy.com. Again, it's about moving the business forward. On the earned media, we went out. We did our media pitching to African American media, to military media, to marketing media, and that's going to get into pretty much what we have been doing for most of our lives as public relations people anyway. And then owned media, again, how do we tie it into the Facebook pages we have, the Twitter pages we have, the comments that we got from the general officers who were quoted in our release, we leveraged and turned into key talking points. So during events that were happening at U.S. Army All-American Bowl, it tethered to the advertising. So we took all the different pieces and we found all those different ways, so that for that entire week, not only was it about the game and the soldier and leadership, but the next thematic was breaking of these African American focused advertisements. So these are the things we're always looking at. And whenever we're going into new business, we always want to make sure we know exactly what are the channels that the client currently owns, what is their traditional media mix, and then what are the conversations that are being had out there, so that we can buy into the right places in terms of leveraging graphics and other video for an advertisement. So the sweet spot is where it all comes together. That'd be the fantastic place to be. All right. Do you guys do any Facebook purchasing? Do you guys do any of those ads, any tweets or anything? I know that for business to business it's different, but is there any social avenue at all that you guys leverage in any way?
We pulled some LinkedIn ads.
Yeah.
Yeah, LinkedIn tends to be a much more powerful tool for our target audience than like a Facebook might be. And in fact, LinkedIn is, I think, becoming even more so of a tool for not only us as an agency, but also our clients and stuff. So, and that's where we're managing groups and building groups and stuff. I can't think of anywhere else that's really been, from a social standpoint, that would be relevant. Even, obviously...
Twitter to a degree.
Say again?
Twitter to a degree, but distant second probably to LinkedIn.
I was just going to say, I'm not sure. We work that, but I'm not sure to what end that really has. I don't know if we've been able to measure that as well as we'd like to from a B2B standpoint. Tweets. I mean,
I think for us. I think it's been sort of instance by instance where it's either around a trade show or conference or around trying to drive traffic to a site in a given moment versus a sustained campaign or effort.
Right. I'll tell you, one of the things in the last few years that has become a strong point for us in this mix of avenues is our blog comments, and it's basically our blogger relations programs that we have developed specifically for Army, because there are a lot of military bloggers out there, and then also for State Farm Insurance. And quite frankly, with both of those, just like we try to get the news off of the traditional page or the traditional outlet for our client, how can we take that story and evolve it further? A great example of this from a bunch of years ago when we were working on Nike was that when Nike Shocks came out, it's that whole technology and the idea behind it. We pitched that idea to Popular Mechanics. Was it Popular Mechanics or it was like Auto Mechanics? It's one of those, like totally out of the lane for Nike. And they totally bought into it. They was like, oh, this is great. This is a totally cool little story. It hits their peripheral a little bit, and it extends your message to some other folks you wouldn't see. I would love to be able to go back in time when the war first started, the first war in 2001 started. I'd like to go back in time, first of all, because then I think I could avert the war, like a movie. But second of all, it's because one of the cool things that we were able to do there was Afghanistan's all about high altitude. It's very cold. It's just the environment is harsh. So the Fort Drum in New York, 110th Mountain Division, they do high altitude training and they do cold weather training. And they would go up to Alaska and do all this crazy, just insane stuff. You had a side of a mountain, like in a 45 to 40 degree angle, and this two chopper helicopter called Chinook. They land the nose of it on the mountain, and the guys run out that side while the rest of it's hovering in midair. Well, we went to an advertising shoot there, captured a bunch of behind the scenes content, and then we delivered that to news outlets because obviously the timing was right. And one of the best stories we got was on the Weather Channel because they were able to talk about it in terms of the weather, but and our troops are going up there and here's how they work this. And so again, it's about, we're able to extend our offerings and when we start looking in these different areas. But bloggers specifically can have a relationship point, and then you can invite them in to participate in your program, or you can bring the content to them. And I think that in your world, there are a lot of people who are, probably still doing their own blogging, be it directly about a life science business or about life science because it's their hobby and they happen to have, 15,000 or 20,000 people that follow them for whatever on their blog or on their Tumblr or whatever. Those are still avenues that you should have in your mix, because what it does is it extends to people who are considered, they're not part of the people that your guys are going to sell to, but when the conversation comes up, we should be doing this, we shouldn't be doing that, this is good, this is bad, ADM, yes, Monsanto, no, all that sort of thing. These are the people that are going to be helping you influence your ultimate audiences. They're going to be helping you push your business forward. And even if they're not on your side, they're people that you want to engage with in some way or another, or more importantly, as we talked about before, listening to see what's being said about that conversation. That takes us to this crazy scheme that one of our guys developed, which basically, you know, this is basically just our way of looking at what all of us really do. Okay, it's the idea though of in the middle is our story. It's what we want to tell people, and this is what we call brand ground. This is our territory, this blue area. So we're going to create based on different things that we want to highlight. You know, what are the resources we have? What kind of leadership stories can we tell? We do story mining, so we can really figure out the breadth of stories out there that we would like to be able to tell to the rest of the world. All right. Then we go and say, what is the common ground that we can go and find for people? You know, is it a Facebook post? Do we turn it into an image? Is there a video? Infographics obviously are huge. I'm assuming you guys are doing infographics, all that kind of stuff. Our paid media takes a role. Our tweets take a role. It's basically, we've got this story. How many different ways can we formulate this thing? It's clay. What can we do with it? And then from there, we go to the user ground here and ultimately get to them through events or advocates or blogs, through employee communications, all these different things. Up here you can see in the social, Flickr, SlideShare, LinkedIn, Scribd. How do we do all that? How can we make sure that we're in all these areas? Because in the end, this is the conversation point. And that's where we want to see these things pulsating, that we have all these conversations going on about us or about our point of view or about our product, whatever it might be, because we've spent our time, you know, putting it into all these different little formats and really being able to maximize that piece of content. You used to just put a press release out and that was it. You did some follow-up on it. And now you have to figure out, all right, if I have that press release, do we have a graphic that goes with it? Did we put a microsite together for that? Do we have video for it? Do we have behind the scenes from the video that we created? Are there outtakes? Are there the guys that are in that video? Can we message train them and get them out to various media? Can we feature them at an event that we're holding? All of these different things that we can leverage. And this is pretty much how we look at every single opportunity that we go out to tell our story. Questions or anything like that? I mean, comments?
So you
anything
obviously
you
work
want?
really closely then with like the Army's advertising group, right? Since you're Weber Shandwick,
Yeah,
you are not
we are-
specifically in control of all of this, but you have to
Not all of
coordinate
it.
it all.
We are McCann, you know, with the Army, we're McCann World Group. It's us, it's McCann, it's Momentum, which is their events, the events team with whom I work closest. There are a lot of different agencies, and so we're all strategizing on a lot of this stuff together. And the role that I'm playing right now is the idea that, oh, we're the public relations team, and we've got all these different guys, and we're going to put together all these different programs, but how are we, you know, are we looking around? Are we taking a 360-degree look at our sister agencies and the content they have and how can we leverage it? Or what are the avenues they've got that we haven't leveraged in the past that we can do? Or even on our client side, okay? Let me go to that piece right now. Well, I like fluid conversations, so I'm going to get fluid. I'm going to jump through on this. So for Army Strong, let me take you guys through this a little bit. All right, so in the planning for the work we do with the United States Army, we talk about, you know, making sure that we're talking about with command POCs and a POC. I don't want you getting carpal tunnel. POC is a point of contact, so it's our client contact for that particular thing. How are we putting together all the groundwork in the front end? When we get to an activation, do we have videographers on site? Are we capturing video? Do we have our social media posts ready? And some of those are static. We're going to know based on the timeline for this event or whatever, we've got them already prepped. But then there are going to be a bunch that happen ad hoc that you want to feed into. Now, with the Army, it's crazy. It's 1 million people in the Army, so you think about how many different things are going on there, and there's only one GoArmy.com. So we've got to make sure that, you know, with GoArmy.com or Facebook or Twitter, that we are timing it right in one way or another as well. And it's going to be the same thing with any other client out there. Just because we've got a program for one of our clients doesn't mean they don't have other things going on. So how are you making sure that that planning is going on? And then we go and experience it and create the content. New style videos, Army Strong Stories videos. These are, again, when I talked about if we have a soldier on ground and we are capturing the behind the scenes of an advertisement, why not talk to those soldiers in between and ask them questions that'll help bring out a message for why he's a soldier, why he feels the strength of an Army soldier, why he might want to compel someone else to become an Army Strong soldier. We created this thing called ArmyStrongStories.com. It's a standalone blog. We do not get involved in it. We pull stuff down only if they violate our terms, which is they swear or they put up a picture that's blah, blah, blah. We don't message these guys. We don't edit their stuff before it goes up. It is 100% clean. And it's something that has won a lot of awards because who would imagine the United States Army would let their soldiers just go up and talk and no one get in their way? But the whole idea is it's part of the story. It's part of that circle. When we're at an event or putting anything together, we've got that opportunity for them. I mean,
how did the Army actually say yes to that? That is insane.
A lot of punching. We had to punch a lot of people. I think that what they saw, we brought to them other examples of companies out there or organizations out there that that basically told the story of the best way to get your story out there is to be as organic as possible. And if the United States Army can allow their soldiers to tell their story, and they're going to be, by and large, good stories, strong stories, and we can literally say we don't jump in. I mean, let's talk about the credibility that you have there for the experience and the conversations that they have. Again, we posted the content, but what do you do with it afterwards? The conversations that are on there. Unfortunately, now I'm linked in to it on my phone, so I get an update every time a new comment's up on Army Strong Stories. I get 60 or 70 of them a day of like, hey, how hard is basic training? Something as simple as that. To what's it like being a woman officer, knowing that all these sexual abuse problems are happening. I mean, that's kind of deep, and we don't get involved in it, but that's the kind of thing you're looking for. We're looking for engagement. The content drives engagement. Ultimately, engagement is what everything is going to be about because that's the relationship, that's the buy, that's the sell, that's the word of mouth. It comes from that engagement. It comes from that relationship.
So you're terrified to just have an open dog because what if they say something bad and where does it go? That is just ridiculous.
So, but you're you're not controlling that conversation. You're monitoring that conversation, and then I assume you're communicating, maybe not through that blog site, but if it really becomes, you see something blowing up, if we take that example about
absolutely
a woman, how difficult it is with sexual harassment or whatever, that's something you start messaging against then?
Yeah, if we have to, or we send it back to the officer or commander of public affairs who's outside of our client area, for them to be aware of something that's going on. Then you have you'll have your digital offense paper and things like that. Yes, so there is some good reaction that has to come from it. But that's what engagement is. It's the talking and the listening and the engaging, and you're always listening all the way around. This slide, again, very busy, but it talks about the many different things that we're doing. You saw that these are those 3 levels that you saw in the vertical plane earlier, where we've got our different outlets. We have our different platforms on which we activate against: U.S. Army Racing, Go Army, the Army All-American Bowl, Army School Challenge, Army Strong Stories, AMED, which is medical, and where it's one of those MOSs, which is a job in the Army, where we are trying to tell people, you will be using cutting-edge instruments, bad pun, you'll be using high technology to save people's lives, and when you come out of this, you're going to be in front of anyone else at your stake because of what you're going to be given in the training you're being given, and sometimes, unfortunately, the frequency that you'll be able to work. And then, who is it that we're going to? Where's that common ground that or the user ground that we're going to? Veterans organizations, formers, mill bloggers, all of this stuff. Now, this is our world. But the minute that we're able to share with the recruiting command or cadet command, officer commander of public affairs, Army Reserve, they've got their own. They have their own. So we make this content, we share it, we make it relevant for all of them, and as we have the conversations here, they end up having here, we're monitoring that, and again, the engagement then is many times broader than if we had just put something out, delivered it through Business Wire, and left it.
to put it in context of, I think, many of our clients, where you're not going to have ROTC sites or OCPA. Think of it sales organization. Think of it as human resources who are interacting with the employees within that organization.
You have retiree organizations, you have professional organizations.
Yeah, anybody
you've
who's
got-
dealing with that target audience, or eventually dealing with our client's target audience, become those independent, if you will, little subcultures.
And that's part of it. When we go through and we're creating the content, when we're talking about how relevant is it going to be, it's twofold. One is, how relevant is it going to be that we can take that and kind of just nudge it differently for all these different groups. The other side is, how can we create something that's very specific for these guys? It's much more intense engagement on that level than if you're really, really broad. Army Strong, that's everybody. Army Strong Surgeon, it's different. So we have to look for those opportunities and what is going to be of interest to them. Again, talking about storytelling, because in the end, that's what we are doing for every client in every PR agency around the world. We are telling stories, okay? Business story, investment story, whatever it might be, we're telling stories. When we first started doing this, like I said, we started Army Strong Stories. Yahoo Instant Messenger, if you guys remember any people using that thing, we had something for that to beam it out. And then, of course, strategic media outreach was traditional media relations. As we went through, we kept those things, but then digital influencer events. You guys support trade shows, right? It's basically what it is, but for us, we go to places like BlogHer, Blog World, South by Southwest Interactive, all of those kinds of things, to talk about the apps that we have so that soldiers can communicate and tell their story more easily, to meet up with mill bloggers, to meet up with women who might have nothing to ever thought about the Army, but there could be women there that can help tell our story from their frame of reference, specifically moms, okay? And then community management, as I said, how are we listening and how are we getting back in real time so that there is a continuous conversation being had. We started putting together our apps. Last year we actually launched a Facebook app that was responsive, so you could turn it different ways, and it doesn't matter what Apple product it was on, you saw, those kinds of things. Just, again, expanding the platform so that our story could get more places. Inspire Stories is one that I find, this is incredibly transferable, especially to something that I think that you guys do. Inspire Stories is where we invite bloggers that may or may not have a lot to do with the United States Army or soldiers in general, and we invite them to have an experience so that they can, in their own words, really get immersed in what the heck we're doing. When the U.S. Army National Hot Rod Association relationship turned 10 a couple years ago, we invited a hot rod blogger from Michigan to spend the weekend with us, to meet generals, to learn why we use this as a platform. And the video and stuff that he was able to put together, again, I think I said it before, it's not just the content we create, but how do we bring this to other folks, was fantastic. And he's, we only look at how influential are they. We're not going to bring someone who's got 15 followers. We're looking for people who've got some weight behind them. But it's a fantastic opportunity. And I think about the time I went to Monsanto. The only time I went to Monsanto, we were going to media train all the heads of Department of Agriculture from the different states. And so we were media training them there, and we got a tour of the place. And it's like, oh, this is a corn growing with a human foot, or weird stuff that they were doing. It was strange things.
GMO is horrible, terrible.
You can't have it. But you think about that. You think about bringing someone in who may or may not agree with you and immerse them and let that blogger, get a piece of that. General Mills right now is having a huge issue because people are, you're using genetically modified, blah, 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 blah. Well, genetically modified doesn't mean bad. It's just, but how do we explain that to them? Right. Well, our recommendation is going to be like, bring them in. Let them see what's going on. Get someone who's influential, get them out there, because that kind of stuff, the bloggers move quickly, and it's fantastic next avenue. And so for this year, we're just building onto a lot of those types of things and trying and really making sure that we're, again, how many avenues do we have? Is it going to be relevant enough? We're not going to do it just to do it. but we are going to make sure that we have exhausted with that idea, that story, that we've exhausted all the different ways that we can put that into different content for those different avenues.
So how do you keep up with all the new bloggers coming up, and that community expands so quickly?
Yeah,
right?
well, I'll tell you, Jeff, there's a couple things. First of all, the listening. When you start seeing someone popping up on a regular basis or being referenced by someone else on a regular basis, not to sound, but you have some junior staffers who are able to spend some time focusing on that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, the junior staffers are a lot smarter about where to go and how to find it and what to look for than older folks. So that's going to be one of the keys. The other key is going to be actually getting out and being a part of that community in a physical sense. And that gets back to that digital influencer events piece.
Mm-hmm.
When we're out there, we are trying to, it's just like if you were at a sales convention. You're out there meeting people and networking and taking cards and like, all right, I'll call you. We do that when we're there. And we ask the soldiers, our clients, to do that when we're there in obviously a more sophisticated manner than that. But that's what you do. You have to see who's out there. You have to see who's interested and engaged. If they're showing up at one of these events, they are an incredibly engaged blogger. And they aren't just out there, stirring crap. So that is one of the keys. But you're right, things expand. Army Strong Network was one component of that whole thing that we did last year, where it was a videographer and a reporter, and they go and they create as many videos as they can when they're on site. They put them into 2-minute stories, and I'll show you a couple in a little bit. From that, we create news releases, and we send those out to the press. We make sure that we syndicate it through the Twitter channels and the Facebooks and all those kinds of things. So we only did a handful of them last year, and I know that our traditional media impressions are way beyond that from when this slide was created, and it's not coming up clearly at all, so it really doesn't
I
matter.
thought that was an artistic approach by your designers. I liked it.
But I mean, we talk about, we've had, from these 10 programmatic executions, almost 70,000 YouTube views, which is important for our audiences, and just as important for our audiences is this idea of, for a soldier experience, showing it in video is key. For the United States Army, before this series of wars came up, very few Americans had any real touch with the soldier. I mean, because it became an all-volunteer force in the mid-'70s, and we just didn't have that anymore. And now almost everyone, knows somebody who did something somewhere, unfortunately. But the push was, if they don't know anybody, they aren't even getting the stories, much less a true experience, a real experience of what it looks like. So that's what we're out there doing. So 3 quick cases on this 1080 Student Racing Challenge. It's about STEM, because the Army is huge about STEM. So it's technology, it's tied in with Army racing, and what we did was we went out, sent that crew to do a story on it for video. We made sure that we had 1080, went and pushed it out for us as well. GoArmy.com, a Twitter feed. This was from the YouTube channel, which we also took bits of that and pushed it out to local media so that they would be able to use that B-roll. An Army Strong Stories, this woman is one of the heads of it, and she is sold as what we call a COI, a Center of Influence, that she will speak on behalf of the Army. All that great stuff. And then at the STEM Solutions, it was highlighted there. I mean, we had a speaking role at that. We took a lot of the material we did and put it into a speech. World Class Athlete Program is basically, if you didn't know, if you want to be a wrestler and a soldier, you can be, if you're good enough. That would be your job, is wrestling. Every 4 years, until this coming year when wrestling won't be there, but the United States Army sends a ton of wrestlers, a ton of boxers. We have the best sharpshooters in the world. They won all gold in just this past summer. In the winter, we've got guys on bobsled teams. I mean, but you don't know that you can do that. People don't know that. So we went out and we, got traditional coverage. We got blog coverage. We got, all of these things. Again, what are all the different ways that we were able to capitalize on all of this work and put it into different formats? And quite frankly, almost all that came from one weekend. one weekend of being with WCAP athletes, is we spent that time saying, we're here, how much different content can we gather, and how many different ways can we parse this for the audiences as it's most relevant to them.
So there obviously has to be a lot of planning up front, right? And you
Oh,
say
yeah.
you're doing it all on a weekend, right? But there's obviously a crap load of thought going into, well before that, how you're going to package it up, where you're going to bring, what vehicles you're going to use to deliver that.
Right. There's a lot of planning on the front end, but at the same time, because we're reporters again, once you get on site, you might find something new. You might find something different to be
So
able
you
to
were
learn.
actually asking the questions then. You're on site. helping
Not
with
me
content.
specifically, but our team, yeah, was on site. At U.S. Army All-American Bowl, I was on site and I was doing asking a lot of questions. We're playing producers. We are developing that content.
Awesome.
And again, it goes back to the kinds of videos that we can do. 5 years ago, we would have one of those, we'd have a flip cam and you got a little bit of sugar, and there's bad lighting and the sound is. We're hiring people who have done this for a living. We're hiring people that are excellent at this because compelling content is not just, hey, it was hilarious, a Harlem Shake. Do you think anyone would watch a Harlem Shake if it was shaking so much that you really couldn't see it? No, you still have to create good content. And it's a hard mix because a lot of the places where areas we're talking about now, and even traditional media, well, the places we talk about in these social channels, that was part of the quirk, was that it was lo-fi, When you're talking about the mid-90s or mid-2000s, it was all lo-fi, and that was what made it real. It was just a guy and his camera and blah, 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 blah. Well, there's so much good equipment out there right now that anyone can use. It just looks like you suck if you put that up there. Unless it's something really spontaneous, like I was there when, Kennedy got shot. Unless you're a Zapruder, it's just going to look like you don't know how to create content. And we as professionals really have to know that it looks good because our clients all consider themselves to be first class, and we can't create third class content for them. So unless we all studied video and photography and things like that, we're going to need some people who really know how to do that. And especially when you're looking at some of this content again being pushed to traditional outlets like a news outlet, to broadcast news outlet, or even a web news outlet. They still want to have something that looks good. How do you pull up? I want to play a couple of the videos that we had done. Again, this is transferable. This is what I've been showing you, especially with the Army. Kind of crosses, it kind of straddles the line between groups that are a little bit more niche or industry related, and then others that are more consumer related. And I know you guys reside more on that industry related piece, but people are all getting their information the exact same way now. I think that one of the things you can even see is if Samsung's out there pushing the Galaxy S3 as a business phone and you can do all those things, it kind of tells you that, it's not a BlackBerry anymore. People are going to be viewing and looking for all the content that they need on their phones, on their mobile devices, and they're going to be just as apt to be able to pull that Twitter feed down and see what kind of video you put up or infographic up than anything else. I'm assuming most of you guys do Twitter in one way or another, personally. Okay. Do you guys follow professional stuff on your Twitter feed? Okay. The rest of the world's not that much different than us. We've got our fun stuff, and we got stuff that's serious. And we want to sit there and be able to talk about being able to get quick news and quick reaction to that in those channels. So you want to make, this is all ultimately works out to work. So let me show you. You might want to move this closer. Can you guys hear the music?
It's very inspirational.
That's Jeff on French horn. How do I scroll down? I wanted to get to. How do I scroll up now? Go to browse videos and scroll down. speaking of Harlem Shake, this one up in the corner, U.S. Army Shakes. CIAA is it's a HBCU, which is historically black colleges and universities. It's basically the third largest tournament in college basketball, but the Army does work there, and apparently there was a soldier. They did a Harlem Shake where the soldier was the first one to go, which was, I don't know. I don't know how to really accept the whole Harlem Shake thing. I was really happy that I didn't see any Harlem Shakes, and then this came up. I'm like, it's client. I got to see what they did. Blah blah blah. Scroll down a little bit further. Let's click that one.
Right here.
Yeah, and this is that STEM initiative, but it happened at the U.S. Army All-American Bowl, and we took this video and were able to share it in a lot of places with clients, with other centers of influence. And this is the kind of video now that is being put together by our videographers.
This is the Vex Robotics competition at the U.S.
Thumbs up on the head, Brett. Brett, are you ready? Where are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
This is the Vex Robotics competition at the U.S. Army All-American Bowl.
Is everything ready for competition?
And you're going to see 47 teams.
I'm Ashley Anderson. I'm with Team 2398B.
Robotics teams from schools here competing to see who's designed and built the best robot.
We can move all the way up, and this is up to the 30-inch goal.
With robotics, I can tell you, I just left from Afghanistan, and our soldiers are using robots similar to these on the streets of Afghanistan.
Athena's Arsenals is our team name. Our team number is 6195A. I'm actually learning a lot because what I want to do in the future, it kind of builds off of this, and so do my fellow classmates and stuff, because I know a lot of them want to be architectural engineers. They want to build robots for a living.
The partnership with the Army is really a natural, because just like many companies and many organizations in the United States, the Army needs students who have engineering skills, who have high-end technology skills, who can deal with tomorrow's technology.
We need to remain competitive. This, in my mind, is a national security issue. China will graduate 700,000 engineers this year. We will graduate 70,000. We need Americans with their ingenuity, their creativity, and their STEM background degrees to help our Department of Defense and our nation.
So you can kind of see how this leverages a big story for the Army in terms of technology, looking for prospects that will be able to fit in. And when we take that video, it's great stuff. The guy just put together a really good piece. He has, what are the small cameras that you pop on your helmet and all that? Anyone know the name of that? I can't remember. They're like little cubes. You can put them anywhere. And we were videotaping drummers, and he was putting it inside their timpanis and things like that. But the idea is we can pull together tons of compelling stuff that tells the story, that drives the story about what the need is and why this is a good life choice for you. And then we're able to take that, we're able to take General Bostic's piece entirely and put it into bullet points. We're able to take photography from that particular visit. We took pieces of that and put it together as a B-roll package for San Antonio News, as well as if we found out where some of the kids were from, back to their hometowns, and we were getting some traction with that. So it is the content, and then the conversations that we had afterwards were great, because it's something that's compelling and it's engaging, and it may be something that folks didn't expect about the Army. So great content, but then what do you do with it? Engage with it. One other, I'm going to show you guys one more. How do you go back here? This one. And again, this is also at an Army All-American Bowl, but it talks about Army marching band and Army soldiers who are musicians, like my dad was in the Army. That was what his job was. And so it's, again, another avenue, compelling video. This thing had been shared on the first time we posted it up. It was shared about 15,000 times or something like that. We pulled it down, re-edited it, put it back up.
your attention to detail is key. Can you make something flawless right now? Can you be going after that attempt for greatness? Show me that.
We came in here hoping to be 70 and sunny in San Antonio, but that's not the case, as you can tell. We're still pushing through it.
We're all just working so hard, and we're all so hyped about tomorrow that weather doesn't even matter at this point.
The kids have been fantastic. This weather has had zero effect on their energy and output. I mean, it's obvious we're all cold, but everyone is working through the element. I've not heard one student complain about the weather.
Very excited for the dress rehearsal later today to perform the whole show for our parents.
I just want to see the Army men's reaction to it. They do so much for us, and I just want to show appreciation towards them because they deserve it.
My eyes are open to the military for sure, and how hard they work to keep this country free. I totally respect them in a different way now.
That reaction from that kid is the kind of reaction we look to have from anyone who participates. And it's not going to be just this. State Farm, for the State Farm Home Run Derby, we brought bloggers down to be able to talk to some of the baseball stars that we had on hand, but more importantly to talk to some of the insurance folks about what it is that how they're going to be looking to change their product mix for families changing needs, etc. And they had a great time at it, but more importantly, they went away with something that they can go and write about then. So that's pretty much, I mean, those are, I think, just really a couple good examples when it comes to the idea of the quality of product that we have to put together, the kinds of things that are going to be looked for from those channels out there to make sure that is as engaging as possible. And it's also, you know, quite frankly, it's a lot of fun. Yeah. I mean, when you talk about it from my perspective on the whole thing and doing it. But yeah, again, for these guys, for State Farm, it could be for the Dairy Council, it could be for the pork producers. And it's not just this kind of thing. There are videos like this, there are photography like that, as you guys know, that work in every channel for any, be it industry or otherwise. It's just about how do we get their attention so that we can tell our story.
So you guys build out an editorial calendar at the beginning of the year? How do you guys go about managing such a large amount of content and a lot of different programs?
We basically look to, I mean, that's actually something that I'm doing over this next week, is really developing up what's our editorial calendar for FY13 in terms of the Army work that we're putting together. And that is absolutely going to be something you want to build out. What's your battle rhythm? How are you telling your story? What are the story arcs, and how do they, you know, they blend in with each other? But at the same time, you always have to be flexible enough for that rapid response piece. And being able to fit that into what you're doing. But with this, you know, we'll have 10 Army Strong Network activations this year. We're going to have 10 Army Strong Stories activations, meaning we have people just on the ground at various events capturing those soldier stories. And we're going to have 3 Inspire Stories, meaning the bloggers that we have come in. Some of them might overlap. But what we want to do is at least make sure that here are the themes that we've got, no matter when we're doing something. How do they fit in, and then how does that ebb and flow time-wise? And again, you don't want to carpet bomb your targets either with stuff. We can't have 15 medical things come out in April and May, and no one will hear it. You got to manage your own signal-to-noise ratios as well. But if you put something out there, you can get from one pulse point to the next by being part of the conversation in between.
Now, do you guys leverage like Radiant 6 or Wildfire?
Yeah, Radiant 6 is part of the mix that we have for the digital side. We're actually going to be turning some of that over to the client. But yeah, Radiant 6, and basically when we're talking about any of our metrics and how we're seeing the different efficacies and things like that. I mean, no Army, nothing that we produce, I think, will ever really go and get 100,000 or 200,000 views in a social channel. But our media stuff, we get 500 million impressions for a U.S. Army All-American Bowl. We do 600 million for the NASCAR team. I mean, because some of that stuff gravitates more. But if we have 20,000, we know that it's much more targeted in who we're hitting. If we are able to have take a video like this, put bullets to it, have one of our generals address the NEA, the National Education Association, and then we have video running at the same time, and we got someone live tweeting from that, sharing some photography from there. I mean, that's an education audience, and we're right on top of them. So we'll make sure that we do that. We'll always take that 360-degree look as to the different ways we can package something, even if it's for a narrow audience.
So you're relying heavily on rating as far as aggregating these feeds in the social? Or do you have a favorite?
I'm not the number one expert to answer that question. We don't rely heavily on that. We have ClickTail, and we've got there are like 2 or 3 other mechanisms. Yeah, so some of those other ones that we kind of aggregate all those together. Okay. If you want to pull our thing back up there, I mean, I think we kind of talked about it already, so I don't know if I really even have to go through them. But it's the idea will be if you could you could just go from there. Just slide something in here.
Something in here.
Yeah. Try up. Okay, further up. Try right here. 6. Okay, so we talked about making your content great. You know, you got to be. Okay. You've got to have a compelling story. You have to have a compelling story. We all have clients who sit there and say, hey, we bought new doors for our factory, and that they think that's a press release.
It is. Hello.
Yeah. If it's a 100% asbestos door, then it will be news. But you make sure that you have a compelling story. This is actually, it was good. I probably should put this last because it wraps it up. Making your content great, knowing what they're interested in, knowing what's going to be something that's going to be useful to them, or that you can actually make them a purveyor of new information and disseminating it further.
So you guys do a bunch of research to determine that?
For us, it's going to be. It will be. It'll be based on things that we've done. It'll be based on I forget the research company that the Army uses, but we get their information because, quite frankly, also from market to market it changes. We could be on National Hot Rod Association and have messaging set for Atlanta, and it's going to be different in Los Angeles because of what are the needs that the Army is looking for, or what's the demographic makeup, things like that.
Sure.
Understand your audience, know what they want, know what turns them on. Obviously,
boas,
pink and yellow is always a good way to go. But it's again, this is part of that listening channel and knowing what kinds of things work well with them. Always improving. Like you saw, we've taken. It's not just the content that we're doing, but the channels. Okay, you saw how we've evolved that storytelling framework of the different avenues or the different components of that. And we're trying to grow that every year to really make it more effective in how we're delivering our message. At the same time, we're adding news folks to our staff, or people who at least have some artistic credibility. All of those things to really make sure that in the end that product is going to be better than it was before. And I can look back and say, the stuff we're producing now, some of the message is the same, some of it's different. We're talking more about STEM than we were before. Before it was about training. Get a job, there's a recession, get good training. When you're out, you're in a good place. Now it's about STEM, which is like about high technology. But also the visuals are better. The messaging is crisper. Stay within your budget. Stay within your budget. Just because you got the next big thing does not mean you chase it down. You have to stay with things that are logical. Well, number one thing in our quill that we've got is, or a quiver I should say, that we've got is pilot program. It's an absolutely beautiful phrase because it gets you to be able to experiment, to taste with something in a new format, on a new channel, with a new platform, whatever it might be, but you're not overcommitting yourself. And you're really making sure, okay, what will the cost be if we do decide to blow this out? Dollars are thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner, and so people want them to go further, so just be smart with that. Sequels are the only option. The photo is actually, it's more of a tongue-in-cheek, like another sequel. But quite frankly, as we all know as messengers, being consistent with your messaging is key. You've got to be consistent with everything that you do with your messaging, with every piece of content that you put out there. Is it matching up with who you are? Is it saying who you are? Are the brand guidelines taking place? Because that's how you make sure that when they see that content that they relate it to you. And it doesn't get, the signal to noise ratio doesn't get out of hand. And that's pretty much it. Again, from our perspective, content is king, but what are you going to do with it? I really can't even say more than that. I mean, we talk to kids, we're talking to influencers, we're talking to parents, but how do we talk to them? We keep getting asked, we just came out of NASCAR, we did 10 years of NASCAR, and eventually, it showed the ROI was not what they needed it to be in something that expensive. We're still in racing, we're still in the National Hot Rod Association. Why? Because it's something that works for our budgets. It provides us a great background, a compelling place to be. It helps generate outstanding content for us, and not in the drab walls of a State Department building. It is out where the people are, and it continues that conversation as we put it into the various channels, be it traditional, online, or new media. And again, the conversation, that's what we're after.
Cool.
I have a question for you on ROI. I'm curious, for a large arm of the federal government, how closely they pay attention, and if you're uncomfortable answering this because it's your client, totally understand, but how closely do they monitor ROI as it relates to marketing spend?
So much more closer than I ever wish they did. They're very keen on it. I mean, quite frankly, right now, our client's in sequester. Our client is experiencing, the budget pullback, and the idea of, they're taking that idea of having to be at home 1 out of every 5 days because the budget requires it. They take it that seriously. That gravitas is also on how they dole out their budget. And they really take a hard look at in a monthly, a quarterly, and annual approach to what are the impressions that we're getting, or how many engagements have we had, how many posts did we put up, how many engagements did the posts have, how many COIs did we meet with, how many pledges of support, POS we call it, all of those things. And we've got them. We break it down by the month that we've got these that we have to meet. We've got them by the quarter, and we've got them by the year. And it's quite stringent on the side of the United States Army. Now, quite frankly, it's almost as stringent with State Farm. State Farm wants to be very cognizant about what they're doing. It's not been that long. I don't know if any of you guys have been working almost 20 years. I'm looking in your direction, Mr. Johnson. 20 years ago, PR wasn't at the C-suite table. Communications wasn't there. It was the first one to get cut out of it. Advertising was there. 1999, I remember talking with, or 2000, we were talking with our client at General Motors North Central Region. And at that time, they sat there, we were like, oh, we're going to try and we want to do more, we want to do more, we want to do more. And the guy who's the general manager out there said, I'd rather put $100,000 into advertising. $100,000 is pretty, and for just Chicago, you can do a ton with that when it comes to public relations. But that's where it used to be. We aren't there anymore. We're at the table, and quite frankly, we're front and center because they've all started to, the C-suites have all decided that it does make sense, but they all don't understand it. And the more that the nature of our business has changed, and we have not been able to, still can't grasp. You talk about metrics. You guys are familiar with Cision? They're like PR track or one of those. They map out your impressions for websites and for media or media placements. And they still can't clearly tell us how many impressions you get for getting onto the New York Times website. And it's been how many years since we've had websites? And so if we can't get that, and we're not fully understanding it, and we don't fully understand the social media impact, the owned media impact, you think the guy who never even studied marketing, he was an engineer and now he's a CFO or something like that? It's impossible. So it gets watched very closely. It's very new. They're intrigued by it, but you're justifying yourself, every quarter. I think even with the Army, if they're looking for their own raison d'etre, we're looking for ours just that much more intently. Any other questions? Concerns?
I have a question about putting content in SlideShare, on SlideShare, the specific medium.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever done that? Have you had experiences?
I haven't put anything on SlideShare before, and I don't recall us doing it for Army, State Farm. That's to say it's not being done. It's been part of our product, our avenue mix. So I know that it's getting done for someone somewhere somehow. But I'll ask that question to see if do you have concerns about it, or you just don't know if it's effective.
Concerns. It's just that with this B2B, because I've been doing a lot of consumer-driven thoughts, over the past 10, 15 years. And so with the B2B, I'm just constantly brainstorming avenues, looking at the social landscape for what makes sense for our clients. And a lot of these, like Facebook, just doesn't make a huge amount of sense for most of the things, if not all the stuff that we do. SlideShare being one that has legs, it's matured now, it's got a huge viewership, and it really attaches itself well to integrates with like LinkedIn and some other social media. Yeah. So it's kind of a way of like engaging on a completely different premise, where you're educating and they know you're educating, and we both know what we're doing here, and yet people still come to SlideShare.
Right.
And so I've just asked anyone who knows of it and has experience in this particular industry.
I'll definitely ask. It's definitely, the breadth of ability that they have when it comes to the the kind of content you can put up there is one of the keys, I think. As much as Twit pics are okay. You can pull one of those up. But even so, with Twitter, you get your great headline, you get your link to your story or to your information, but it's still driving you somewhere else. To be able to be in a moment of something and not have to go. It's like destination shopping. If it's a place people come to on their own before they even know what they might be looking for or what they're going to find, you've got a great audience there, and because of the amount of content you can provide there, it's great.
I've got little to no experience with that particular one, but do you have any hints you could drop?
I can find them. I'll find them from our guys who have done it before. Like I said, I haven't had to interface with it before, but I can definitely help out and find something on it. I think that you guys are right. LinkedIn for you guys is huge. I do believe that you guys would be able to find some great traction in Twitter just because of the amount of business news that I see on there and guys I follow. When it comes to sports marketing, Darren Ravel is busy on that all the time. Every sports writer in this city is on there all the time, and the business news that gets passed back and forth on there is really strong. And again, it's a place where people are on their off time as well.
Right.
It's part of their regular, for people, more and more people are starting to be, at least people of our age are starting to be, okay, this is where I'm at. Younger users, which you guys don't interface with, are getting to that disposable thing because they don't have a trace that way. The Hall of Records is not keeping all of their tweets, and they can do all the weird crap that the young kids do without getting in trouble for it. Plus, their parents aren't there. But yeah, we're always exploring, and especially we've got guys who do this engagement piece strictly for B2B in our office, and they still have their own earned and paid media and channels. So I'll find that out for you.
So regardless of what medium you're using, what the content is, who are you building the core of that content? What your core point of differentiation for the Army or for State Farm or whatever? You're identifying that, and I assume you go back and ensure that all of the communications are tying back up to that somehow, right?
Yeah,
How do you manage that? With all the different types of programs that you have, and
yeah, we're doing everything from the ideation of the program itself to how we start populating that with the message development. We're working in conjunction, obviously, with the client as everyone would, but the message development to the materials development to our guys were doing all the framework for the sites. We on our Army Strong Stories, that website where soldiers can blog, we have 16 curated pages, meaning there's 15 different jobs like medical. I think one was mechanic or helicopter mechanic. All those very semi-specific and then we have one that's Spanish language. And we curate those, on a daily basis. We figure out what's the new news that's going to go up there. How are we readjusting these things? When does this thing come down? All of those things are being handled by us or by, in some cases, a vendor that we hand it to. But we're playing a role in all of that. And that it's that by being able to be a part of that from the start, there's dynamism to the story that we're telling. And again, changing that package up, changing that content up, so it is fresh at all times. You have 1 million soldiers. That means there are 1 million days that we can put onto that website every day.
Right. What about? How did you go? Was the Army always operating this way from a communication standpoint, or was this something that you guys brought to them? And if that's the case, was there apprehension on their part? How did you get them to change the way that they look at the way that they communicate to their targets?
Again, pilot program's a great word. I've been working, like I said, I've been on this for 12 years. So when they didn't have a sports marketing program until right before I joined. And the first program was the National Hot Rod Association. And then we got the NASCAR team and the U.S. Army All-American Bowl, and we had a bull riding team, and we had a rodeo team. And sometimes it depends on who's chief of staff of the Army. Tell you what kind of team you're going to have. We haven't had one that was from Wyoming, so it worked out. I've slapped a bull in the ass before. It's a gratifying experience. But so we pulled those together, and those have less pilot to them. Army Strong Stories had a pilot piece to that. If we do a partnership with National Urban League, we do a pilot program with it, and then we expand that relationship. We sign what's called an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, that we're going to work together to build something bigger. And so we foster those relationships and bring them in. And some of them they say, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that one. Either straight out or after the pilot. But for the most part, we're helping them, we're bringing those relationships, helping build them. And in the 6 years I've been with Weber Shandwick, the work we've done has been exponential to what we did in the 5 years I was at Manning, Selvage, and Lee. Part of it is, I think that we've just got a really strong brain trust. Our PR work is being housed in an office that's done a lot of public affairs, business to business, things like that, along with consumer. And before we were just in consumer. And I think we were limited in our thinking. I think that's part of it. The other part is that as they've grown, the client has grown, they've seen that they can't just, they can't rely on an advertisement or, the name on the side of a car and have kids, show up at Western and Addison across from Lane Tech and go into the recruiting station. They have to get out and be where they are. If the kids are on the phone all the time, well, you've got to be on the phone. If kids are blogging, you got to be blogging. That's what it is. GoArmy.com had a listening session where you had 24 hours a day. They had 10 soldiers answering questions of kids who were looking stuff up on GoArmy.com. Because guess what? Kids, that was the number one way they got kids to join. Kids could be anonymous. They could just ask a question. It could be in the middle of the night, Well, you got to go where they are. So as we can prove that this is where your audience is, or this is the audience to which you need to be speaking / convincing, that's how we, between that kind of research, that's what drives our strategies. And it's something that we do for, we obviously do it for all of our clients, but for this one, there's just so many different facets to it that it makes it, insane and incredibly gratifying at the same time.
Cool.
Bueller?
Any?
I think, how many questions are you allowed to ask?
All right.
One more.
One more.
Well, I'm just curious if you could also share. I'm assuming you guys don't have a Chemuniversity, but you probably have some type of a think tank, and this is how you come out with great ideas and sort of judge the scope of where things are going, where they will be next year, and so on and sort of. There's this media mashup coming up in NYC, and there's a few others. I'm sure you know more than I do. Could you suggest any that would be good possibly for us to attend, where we could actually get some actionable information? It's places that we need to be, have to be.
You know what, I can, but I'm going to get back to you on that one too with the full list, because the ones I know, like Sports 2.0 is a good one. I thought there was a Mashable one coming to Chicago. I thought there was going to be one coming to Chicago. I'm not 100% on it, but I thought I thought they put one together for the Midwest, and it wasn't just in New York. But let me check on that. But you know, it's just like anything else when you're talking about ongoing education. You know, there's go to as many as your budget will allow you to. Quite frankly, seriously, you're going to find a lot of the same people at these, because those are people that are interested in getting out. I go to the sports ones, and it's the same guys at the sports ones, which is great because they're coming up with new ideas, and quite frankly, they're the ones that are most into that. But I mean, I think that it's going to be just about anyone that you think that comes to town. I would say go to. I mean, you want to troll Publicity Club or PRSA, and they'll have their pulse on a couple of them that come up as well. And quite frankly, because I think a lot of this kind of stuff is still transferable, you could go to a sports one and get something out of it. Because it's just about how are you communicating with these different groups.
It's almost better, man, because to get our heads out of life sciences, and this is what blows me away about what you all are doing. And when I've sat down with you and not talking about Iron Maiden, which is rare, is that we, it blows me away what you do with such a massive organization that is not only a government organization, but it's the Army. You know what I'm saying, right? And the amount of keeping things together, and I look around, which is why Steve is here, of course, by the way. Look around at what we do. Our world is like this big compared to what they're dealing with, right? In terms, right? And so what we have to do is like bring these learnings and say, okay, I see Tommy working on an ad right over there, right now, right? How do we repurpose this? We're doing all this work. How do we do that thinking to bring it all together? And this is really the point of having the really cool Steve Johnson here. And everyone is next to him. But what blows me away is exactly that, man. And I want you all to like bring this into your daily thinking, from a PR thing. And I keep saying this, and some of you have heard me in my diatribe that there is no more PR in creative and account departments. There really shouldn't be, because it's all so interrelated right now. And we got to start thinking in that way. And an organization as old and as big and as bureaucratic as the Army is actually getting hip to this whole thing because they have to. And this is kind of what brings us where we're doing things, Courtney, when you're designing something freaking beautiful and awesome, think about where else this plays out. And before we even start to design or develop thinking and messaging, think about, okay, beyond where we're at. We like to think that we're in a very integrated environment. Oftentimes our clients pigeonhole us into here, right? We are doing a print ad. Well, you know what? We got to continually push back and say, yeah, we're doing a print ad. But here's how it plays out. Not just show them a portfolio like we've done, but really dig in and say, this can look like this on this blog, and here's the video that can accompany it, and here's the kind of budget it could be. I mean, just thinking really, really more aspirational, because our clients are going to need pushing. When you talk about the Army dudes responding to the blog, the Go Army guys, our clients are terrified. Push it, point to the Army blog and say, dude, if the fucking Army can do it, why can't you, right? I was
going to say, it's, quite frankly, it's like I think everyone's got smart people. So, I mean, what we're working on, what you guys are working on, has to do with the budget that our clients are bringing to us. Like I said, part of me was like, wow, I'm going to go in there.
All of us want more of it.
Exactly. I was telling my wife, she's like, well, aren't they in marketing? Don't they do some of this? I was like, yeah, they do, but I guess I'm just going to talk to them a little bit about how we do it.
Yeah.
Because it's not that you guys can do all of that. It's more about how are we being able to talk our client into saying, here's why it's going to be more effective if we do it with all of this. And it's kind of the stuff that we all chomp at the bit to be able to say, oh, okay. And it's like, well, we only want X, Y, and Z. Well, how did we invest to be able to say, hey, well, listen, this is what it would look like. Here's the concept brief. and invest in that to be able to say, and then pilot program. What if we try it one time to do this, and we'll do these different things and see how it works out, how it ties into the assets that you already have, and all of those kinds of pieces are going to be, those are where the big deals come from. Minnesota, our Minnesota guys are, we're smaller than New York and Chicago, but we've helped develop a lot of the strategy for how we're approaching this. They got just some really smart guys up there. I just think that it really comes down to if you're able to be able to show them a new avenue, and quite frankly, maybe a case study or two doesn't hurt. But if you show them a new avenue and say, let's just try it once, I mean, that's kind of the fissure that you're looking for to be able to.
Right.
Fissure, there's a science word for it. To be able to, to break through and have them see the other things they could be doing, even in a B2B environment. Even in a B2B environment.
I think especially in the B2B environment, because our universe is so much smaller than what y'all are dealing with. So are the budgets, of course, but I don't think that should stop us, because more and more of our clients are going away from spending big money on print advertising, not for publication with CD News and all the other news that we deal with that help us out. But we we can't even talk them into that budget because we have nothing to stand on, right? So there is money to be had, there's budget to be had. It's just that, and I'm guilty of it as much as anyone, which is why I'm learning from you and saying, okay, we get stuck into shit, I gotta get this print ad done, or I've gotta get this website up, and integrating the content piece of it is really key, because, as I've, again, repeated before, there is no boundaries anymore between PR, creative, account, whatever. However, in digital, everything is digital first off. There will be some print stuff, but eventually it gets digital anyway, right? So we think through this way and say, okay, it is just the delivery mechanism. How do we grab the content that is relevant and make it relevant to each individual audience segment through different digital channels? We got to do that work and really integrate, which is what is now our PR group. But really get smart about this stuff and know where people are going out. Know who the bloggers who are influential are. I honestly can't think of any life sciences blog personally. I know you all can, but it just shows how out of touch I am. At least I know it. So, but going backwards from there, that's how I think we all need to move if we want to stay competitive in the marketing world right now. And we got the opportunity to take it. Yeah, no, not so much. Comments? Anyone disagree?
No, I think we all agree. I think maybe not to the degree it needs to be done, but I think we're moving in that direction in a lot of different ways. On Will, for example, some of the stuff that we're doing there, right? We're building content and looking at how do you splice up white paper and obviously into press releases, how do you turn that into video press release, how do you move that into a poster at a show, how do you ensure that all works. So I mean, it's happening. I don't think we're doing a good job of communicating the bigger picture to our clients in terms of showing them that.
And a lot of it is a repackage of what we're doing day to day. We have to remember we're not selling
Oh,
off
and I
the
love
shelf.
repackaging because it's kind of free and we make more money.
Yeah, and we're not selling off the shelf products and services, I mean, everything should be tailored and customized per the client, and we just kind of have to remember that and rework the proposals and the plans accordingly.
Yeah, no, that's exactly, you were dead on, and this is kind of what you said that you do, man. You're an editor. You take the information, you get the information, and you repackage it. So, all I'm saying is that, my drive for this thing has always been, let's just all think and get creative and see where else this thing can go, because it's, there's some cool places it can go that I have no idea where it is.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely a direction that we're headed. I think a lot of clients are intimidated or scared by it because it does require a lot of thinking. It's not just throwing out a tactic and seeing what happens, but it's actually stepping back and thinking about who you're trying to reach, why, what's effective today in 5 minutes and tomorrow, and then how they're going to respond, and then how do you engage them based on their response. It requires a lot of thinking, and I think a lot of clients are freaked out by that because that requires an extra level of dedication to their marketing.
Yeah.
And
But-
so I think it's our responsibility to try to take them there.
But I think what the handsome Steve Johnson said was that, you start with a pilot, and I think that's one way where clients, you're right, that's a magical word where clients don't feel as intimidated, that they're committing all the resources that they, in fact, have to go up to their superiors and get approval to do some new weird idea of thinking. And if you can start proving it out in a pilot program, in a simple product introduction or a new market introduction or something like that, it provides you that case study that you're talking about that goes, okay, hey, this worked. It was, quite honestly, I can see this being much more efficient, and from a cost standpoint, even for our clients, where you're taking the thinking that example you use, Tommy's spending all this time on this ad. You spend another, hour making up a number there. How else can we utilize that piece?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the efficiency of that ad, the effectiveness of that time has multiplied by a ton. So I think
what bums me out is when clients go, we need a digital firm.
Oh yeah.
And we're like, okay, motherfuckers, right? We are. And so it's like thinking about us, and we want a digital firm. Well, that little wheel, the 3 different wheels that were going on, man, it was 98% digital going on, if not 100%. Traditional media.
Yeah,
is
if you
digital
want,
as well.
especially if you want it to be, you can find a way to do that in a digital sense.
Right, right. So this is just, me, the way we think and repositioning ourselves as we approach clients. We got to talk in that language so we don't, be seen as antiquated. And like I said, man, some clients are just hard to get them to think differently, and I get it.
The whole idea of the pilot program is a lot easier to sell if you're like an agency of record or you've got an ongoing thing. If you got a project by project client.
Yeah.
It's a little harder to do because that's your project maybe. But again, there are tastes that you could give them, and I'll tell you this: one way to not get a pilot program on something is to not ask for one. It's absolutely one way to get.
Well said, brother. Well said.
Well, I want to thank you guys for inviting me here. I can only have that one beer, or else I will not be playing very good basketball.
Maybe bad basketball.
Oh, you got a game tonight.
I got a double header.
Hey, San Diego, Rachel, Kenna, thank you guys so much for participating over